Welcome into edition 154 of the Owner to Owner podcast. Marama Carmichael joins me today. Thanks for coming in, Marama.
Thanks for having me, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's just get some facts and figures out on the table. You're here in your capacity as a few things, a founder and CEO of Oracle Tree. You're a mentor. You've started and owned businesses in industries other than the one you're in now. You've also had some corporate sales experience, senior executive experience. You've authored a book, which we'll get to. And we're going to talk a little bit about our shared interest in getting more people getting their businesses working better for them. And you can talk about exactly how you do that through Oracle Tree. So how about you give us a couple of minutes on your own background and pathway into where you are today at Oracle Tree, and then get into what Oracle Tree does.
Yeah. So, it was a long and winding path. I started in the video industry, putting myself through uni. I was studying physics at uni. So I've got a very scientific background, like way back in the day. And then from there, I went into video sales, from like working as a casual video store person to someone like the founder. Sales rep poached me from the video store to go and do video sales, which I did for a number of years. And then I moved into natural therapies. I ran a natural therapies business for 10 years. And I was in corporate for, probably like 5 or 6 years, I think. And then the pivotal moment that kind of moved me into Oracle Tree was very, very dramatic. The house I was living in actually burnt down. And it was one of those real wake up moments of like, what am I actually doing with my life?
Wow.
Yeah, it was big. I don't talk about it that much because it always feels a little bit, we were talking just before we rolled about sometimes it's almost like sometimes things feel like you're doing it because, not because it's the story. But yeah, so I had a natural therapy center that I was like, I'd been a really horrible boss to myself. I thought I had a business. I didn't have a business. I had a job. And I wasn't a very good employer. So I was there. The practice itself was at break even. I was paying fairly high rent for like 8 different modality rooms, and I was renting rooms out to practitioners. And then I had my private practice that was running from the business as well, which was where I was making what I was living on effectively. And so when remember like standing outside of the front, watching every physical thing I owned disappear, literally up in smoke, just thinking like literally what am I doing with my life? It was winter, it was raining, my kid was in a taekwondo uniform, and I just decided then and there, well, within a couple of days afterwards, I was not very good to my practitioners, but they were very understanding. I literally gave them 30 days notice, closed the centre down, and moved my practice home. And then I found after about 3 months of that, I got very, very bored very, very quickly because I realized that I was missing like the mentoring and everything, which is what I was doing, that I actually was filling my cup in when I was running the Natural Therapy Center, because I was renting all these rooms out to the practitioners and helping them grow their little fledgling businesses when they were straight out of school and doing all of that kind of stuff. So I only kind of worked from home in the Natural Therapy Center for about 3 business when I started what became Oracle Tree. It's gone through a lot of evolution. And I started literally with me and a laptop and a freelancer that I got off Upwork, building really, really not very good websites. And the first person was like one of my practitioners that I'd made homeless, that I did a little simple website for them. That was when I started. And over time, it's evolved. Like, we became like a good web agency and then marketing agency. Now we're moving into AI. Obviously, I've expanded the team and grown. Like, I don't do any hands work anymore at all now. It's all about the mentoring and the coaching and the uncovering what business owners need. And Oracle Tree is now like a full stack digital marketing agency is what we call it. So we do branding, websites. Strategy first is our motto, which is where I kind of play in the strategy.
Yep.
And really finding out what business owners actually want and saving them from making a similar mistake that I made, where they're making themselves a really horrible job and being a horrible boss and painting themselves into a corner. So it all kind of almost goes full circle in a weird way. Yeah.
Well, you haven't been afraid to like change horses and courses, even going from physics out of physics into corporate video to natural healing, I think. But it seems like also a natural place for you to be a mentor, even though they were employees. Like, they were independent. Oh, okay.
They were independent people, so they were my tenants, I guess. For want of a better thing. So they were paying for their room, paying a flat room hire, and I put it upon myself to try and get them business so they could afford to pay me rent effectively.
That would put you in a minority of landlords that are actively investing in their tenants. So that's pretty cynical.
Yeah.
But you had you could see the that you were dependent on them, and Vicky Verka, but you must have had a natural inclination to want to help to be in that industry, and then also to mentor and coach these independent operators.
Absolutely. And I think that's always, if I look back, what the through line is. So our purpose at Oracle Tree is to empower businesses and empower business owners. And I think if I look through the through line of everything, that's always what I've been looking to do and what I have been doing. So that's like my personal purpose is about empowering people, which means giving them, helping them, first of all, get clarity on what they do. And weirdly, my natural therapies background also helps with that, because I have very different conversations with people to what other marketing agencies might have, where we talk about, what do you actually want? Like most marketing agencies that I know of, not all of them, some of them are awesome, but mostly it's much more order taking of like, what do you want us to do for you? It's quite transactional. Whereas we're always like, are you sure you want to do, like, these are the repercussions, the outcomes that will be from that. What do you want? Who do you want to work with? How do you want to spend your days is a question that I'll kind of ask in various ways to my clients.
It's such a powerful question. Whether you're an advisor to a business owner on HR or other, to understand why the owner is coming to see you in the first place, and as a good advisor, you going back with, well, what are you trying to achieve here? Is it about you feel like you're not keeping up, so you got to grow really quickly because it seems like that's what everyone's talking about? So it's such a powerful question. We'll come back to that. The experience you had when a house burnt down and you completely rethought your whole life, was that partly about dissatisfaction with the business you were in? Therefore, in a way, it's like time, or it's an opportunity to do something completely new. And then how did you get from wellness to web?
So it wasn't, so it was my driving force was that my kid was in her Taekwondo uniform in late June, early July, 9th of July it was, in the rain, in winter in Sydney. And I was picking her up after dark yet again. She's been after school care. She was like 9 at the time. She's 25 now. And so it was really, I wanted to be with her. Like it was like, what's important to me? And it was that. And I felt like the center itself was taking much more than it was giving at the time. And it was like an ego piece of mine that I felt like I wasn't a real practitioner if I was working from home, was the story I was telling myself before then. I had to have a physical premises to be like a legit business owner. And so the conscious choice I made was that I didn't want to have physical premises ever again. So Oracle Tree, from its very inception, is virtual by design to have that freedom. And so what it's done is, as far as that, like empowering people, like I live it in everywhere. So our team are remote. We do 4-day work weeks. We don't work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Everybody works remote. Everyone works from home. So we have really talented people wherever it is that they are, that actually have genuine freedom. And to me, that's like super important. And the work that we do is fantastic. And our team are, better and more passionate and more everything because they've got that genuine freedom. And, if their kid gets home, it's not like, what are you doing? Lock the clock. If they have to pick their kid up from school, they go and pick their kid up and then they continue their work. So I think that inception point has kind of flavored everything since then. And it was because that's what I wanted. My daughter, is 25 and lives in Melbourne now. I'm on the Gold Coast. So, that driver hasn't been a thing for a long time. As far as like being home from school hasn't been for a very long time, but Oracle Tree has got that at its like essence in its DNA.
Yeah, you've got a team of, is it not 15?
Yeah, about that, like 9, I think, on the payroll. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you have a culture that is your culture, and it's on your website. You talk about sustainable development goals, and we were chatting about that earlier as well. But it is to attract and keep the right people, to have a culture. It won't work for everybody, but it sounds like it's working your way for you. So you carry with you from right through all those, the wellness thing to Oracle Tree, this concern, care of the well-being of your people, which
exactly
it's the biggest.
And I think that's the pivoting thing for every business owner, I think, is that you get to create your business the way you want to have it. Otherwise, you'd go and work for someone else. And what I see a lot is people like doing what they think they should do, and they don't necessarily think about what they actually want to do.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. When owners come to you, what are they what are they largely coming to you for? What's their first question for you or directive to you about my business is not going?
Yeah, most people come to me, their first thing they say to me is, I need insert thing. I need a website. I need marketing. I need a new brand. And my question back from them is usually some version of why. Like, what is it you're wanting to do? Or maybe you need that. And sometimes what people come to me thinking they need isn't what they need at all to achieve the goals they want to achieve. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. And so I think that often the first conversation I'll be having with people is about like reframing their why or their what and thinking what they want to achieve. Typically speaking, they're established businesses who are in some kind of state of flux. Often they're really good at their craft, whatever it is. We do a lot of work in trades construction. So oftentimes it's like they want to get off the tools and don't have enough revenue to get off the tools, or they know they need to do marketing. They might have had a competitor who's come in who's like really gung-ho and fantastic and doing all the things, and they're seeing that they're losing market share and it's putting downward pressure on them. Or they might have just bought a business or taken over a business from their parents, like an inherited sort of kind of deal. So usually there's some kind of like change state, and they're in a state of flux and they don't really know what to do.
Kind
or
of
they've
react.
kind of cobbled sorry. Yeah, they're often very reactive, but they've kind of come to the thing that they're or being reactive has got them into the problem that they have. So the book I wrote is called Fixing Frankenstein, How to Take the Monster Out of Running Your Small Business. So they'll often have what I call Frankenstein businesses, where they started off like being maybe a solopreneur, similar to how Oracle Tree did. They're really good at what they do, whatever that thing is. I'm a really good electrician, so I'm going to do the thing. And then they get more business and more business and more business, and then they might hire someone and they might hire someone else, but they don't think strategically about it. So they're reactive up until that point. And then they start bolting bits on and something breaks and falls off. And so they stick it on with gaff tape, and then something else happens, and then they plug something else in, and then someone tells them that they should do Facebook ads. So they go and hire a freelancer to do Facebook ads, but then that doesn't work with something else. And they end up kind of creating this kind of monster over a period of time. And usually they come to me and say, help, I need whatever. And I look at it and they've created a monster. And so it's then a matter of, okay, well, which bits of the monster are perfect and should stay? And which bits do we need to like fix and cut off and do differently? And which bits of that? And that's where we come in. So our motto is strategy first. So it's like, okay, what have you got? What's working? What's not working? Where are the gaps? And we think big picture, because oftentimes they're very reactive and putting out fires everywhere, so they don't actually see that if you stopped it up the hill somewhere, that's that old saying about saving people who are drowning from a river, and they don't look upstream to see who's pushing them into the river. It's that kind of scenario.
Yeah. Well, and it's not surprising the pressure on owners, whether it's reactive or proactive, with the amount of stuff that comes down through our phones and just everywhere about there are silver bullets for sale everywhere you look.
Mm-hmm.
10x this, 7x this. And and if there's if you're ambitious, and a lot of owners, depending on the stage they're at, they are ambitious or they want more, and it can be pretty easy to make the decision.
Absolutely.
I've done it many times where you think this might be different, better, but it's a lead generation funnel, or it's
whatever it is,
building alliances or something.
Well, a lot of owners have got some form of ADHD or something like similar as well too. So, the shiny object syndrome, and like, this is the thing. And so they do a thing, and then often they'll stop doing the thing before it's had time to work, or they'll do it and change. And, there's, later on, if we do the book thing, the book that is my thing is in there. Yeah. So the book I'm going to recommend talks about this. It's like, if you're a visionary, one of the problems of that is that your team can't keep up with it. So when you're by yourself, if you're starting as a solo business, like, it's fine because you run with it. There's no one else to kind of move. You've got a very small boat. It's very easy to pivot. The bigger you get, the bigger your boat is, the harder it is to change direction like that. And the more likely you are to lose amazing people because you keep on changing your mind on stuff, which is incredibly frustrating for the people who are trying to fulfill your vision for you. And as a business owner, you keep on changing your mind and doing this and not staying the course. So you'd never kind of get where you want to go. And half the time you haven't actually set a proper goal anyway.
Which is, why that question you ask at the beginning. I hear what you're saying you want, but why?
Yeah.
And I have a lot of those conversations when owners come to me, I'm cooked, I want to sell, and okay, how did you get started?
Mm-hmm.
What's actually going wrong? So you obviously do the same thing as your team does, but that it takes a bit to be able to have the wherewithal, the experience, and even when there's an order there for the taking,
Mm-hmm.
to say, well, hang on, just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about, is that your life experience, business experience to date, and then a sense of, I want to have good clients I want to work with successful clients who are getting out of it what they want. So I'm going to put a few checks and balances in place.
100%. 100%. I think too, and it kind of goes back to that creating a lifestyle and a business lifestyle that I want to work in. Like, bad clients can be a real culture killer for a business. If a client is, every time you see an email from them or a message from them, you kind of like, you and your entire team are like, oh, like that's a horrible way of living your life. Like you're living in constant fear. And again, part of being a business owner is you get to decide who you work with and who you work with in both ways, who you work with within your team and who you work with as clients. And I'm quite protective of my team in that way, because there are so many clients out there that you might as well work with cool people who want to do cool stuff and help them achieve amazing goals as work with someone who isn't a culture fit. And again, there's nothing wrong, not that these people are bad people, but there are some people, clients who we've respectfully and kindly said, you don't need us, you need an assistant sitting with you, because we're not immediately responsive. Like we're not your in-house person that you can say, hey, can you do this? And it gets turned around in 2 hours. That's not how we work.
Yeah. So
So
you're
it's,
avoiding, and
yeah,
bad clients or difficult clients, if you can look forward a bit and say, I can do without that,
yeah.
that's a good thing.
And most times I find that that conversation that I have with business owners, they enjoy it because it's refreshing, because it's not like an adversarial thing. It's not like, well, why do you want to do that? It's like a curiosity piece. And most business owners that I know, and I'm sure that you probably have the same thing, is that they don't get to have those conversations very often. They're too busy for the most part making sure that everyone else is okay and squishing their own stuff down to just get through, just fix the next issue, just make the next client happy, just, hire the new team member, just do whatever, all of that stuff. And so the do thing, I find that most of my clients are like, like it's almost like, well, actually, why do I? It gives them that space to think about it for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And they always have an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's,
sometimes what there is, like, when you go to the doctor, sometimes you know that you've got an ear infection, and like you go to the doctor and you say I have an ear infection because blah, 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 blah. So sometimes you self-diagnose well, but other times you don't. And so I think it's the same thing. Like you go in, sometimes our business owners will have self-diagnosed, and sometimes they're right, but sometimes they're not. And sometimes doing the thing might be a short-term fix, and yes, it might be the highest priority, but something else is going to happen later,
Yeah. Yeah. That's why advisors and mentors and are so important in small business. It is lonely. It is frenetic, but I think also that when somebody with a bit of gravitas, a bit of experience, a bit of empathy can kind of open up and say, "Look, but why?" or "How come?" A lot of owners, I find them very responsive to that, because
always.
they're potentially sharing something that they haven't been able to share with employees or at home or with their other traditional advisors who are kind of, doing what they do, which is dealing with legal or tax or financial issues, but it's not the personal side of it, which has such a massive influence on the owner's well-being and the business's success.
100%. 100%. And it's like, and it's sometimes like, it's always partly at least like what the business owner wants, like in there, like, on a very human soul level, whatever you want to call it. But sometimes it's quite practical as well. It's like, when we go into the things as far as like choosing your customer avatar, like there are some customers that you A, have more fun working with, B, that have got more product, more profitable, like for your bottom line, because you're more familiar with it, see, all of that stuff. So there's very practical things on it. It's not all, and sometimes it's like, well, okay, if you have marketing, but have you got another question I'll often ask people is, if we were to double your business, like, do you have the capacity to fulfill it? So if they're already overworked, they don't need that as their first instance. They need something else. So it's like, it's always a balance of every action has a reaction, and they need to be balanced in a way that makes you grow in a way that is sustainable for yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally. You can double down and work 100 hours a week for a short period of time, but you do that for a long period of time and you end up killing yourself. So.
There's a cost at some point somewhere, and
Mhm.
you can mask it, and I think there's a lot of that in small business, being the entrepreneur and being the provider, perhaps, or whatever it is. That there's a lot of pressure goes with that, but
and the ego, I think a lot of small business owners, our identity is so tied up into our businesses that if the business is struggling in any way, shape or form, it's somehow a reflection on you as a person, that you're a failure, that your family were right in the first place when they said, why'd you do that thing, like all of that kind of stuff.
Why didn't you get a job, like a proper job?
Yeah, all that stuff. So I think like business owners and entrepreneurs in general, we're a different breed to into a lot of people. So
it takes. I think a lot of people find their way into a business, and it's they kind of make it work. I think some people are naturally adaptable and deal with it a bit better, a bit more efficiently. Others muddle along and do okay. But it's still the most important thing is why are you in there? And if you can actually, I see at the end where that purpose thing comes in. The reliance of the business on the owner makes it very difficult to sell.
You can't, yeah.
It also makes it, you see through that, and you know that the person without the business is also possibly quite unhappy and would be better staying in that business, provided the business is restructured. Or, I mean, at some point you have to move on, but there's a lot of life left in a lot of owners and a lot of businesses if it was properly organised and matched to what the owner honestly deep down says, this is why I want it. And there's a lot of businesses that make a wage, but you have, and that's okay if that's if you're conscious about that, and you've got a lot of flexibility. If you want to grow the business, you can, compared to in a job to go from 120 grand a year to 180 to whatever, as a salary. There's a lot of other influences on that. You've got that, but yeah, not for everybody. But certainly the approach you take with questioning and digging deeper is wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Tell us what Oracle Tree does, just high level, as a service to business owners.
So we are a digital marketing agency, essentially. So we do branding, websites, social media, SEO, basically all the things in marketing.
Advertising
and advertising, yeah. So Facebook and Google ads, that kind of stuff. We don't do PR. And we actually do print advertising. So if someone wants to advertise old school in magazines, we can make the design for them, but we don't facilitate go and advertise in this magazine. So we don't advise on that space, but we can certainly do physical print work as well for them. So basically we do gap analysis using corporate speak. So we find out what's doing, what's working, what's not working, and then fill in any gaps. How it works on a practical level, if people are working for us long term, is they set their marketing budget, and then they have our entire team of experts to spend their marketing budget in the way that makes most sense for them to do right now. So it's quite fluid. They're not locked into, okay, you're in this package, you get tick, 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 tick. That's it. You've got that for 12 months, even if it's not working for you or something changes. So our clients really love that because it's flexible. That if they've got a big event coming up, they can, they've got the adaptability to use their budget to create something, or they can do a little special project, we call it, if it's like something on top of the regular spend.
And see, underpinning that is, if a business is turning over $2 million, as a bit of a guide, you ought to be spending 2% of your turnover or 1% of your turnover. Is that a sort of
on
principle?
Marketing, theoretically, you should be spending 10% of your turnover if you're wanting to maintain, and 12 to 15 if you're wanting to grow on marketing altogether, which includes anything you've got in-house as well, and ad spend and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's we are on the more, like, we charge like proper agency rates, but we are on the low end of the agency rates because we want to be affordable for small businesses. So yeah, like at the time of recording, our minimum spend for a monthly engagement is $2,500 a month. So it's pretty affordable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just, we just adjust what we do for people depending on it. And then, there might be a project. So someone might need a new brand, in which case we get the brand experts to do a brand with a brand guide or a new website or whatever. But first is the strategy. So we do a strategic consulting package, which is like a standalone package. And that's where we have all these deep questions about who are you? And that's the most processed, like there is a very specific process that you go through, and that, and it's a flat fee standalone consulting package. The knowledge that comes out of it will be dependent on what your outcome is that we talk about in the first meeting. So for some people, they've used that because they've hired an in-house marketing person. They just weren't sure that they kind of quite nailed something. And so we went through the process with the in-house marketing person, and they had it 95% great. There was 5% that was pretty crucial that were missing. And so we kind of advised them and helped and coached them in there. And then we sent them off along their way. And then they sold actually for quite a lot of money to somewhere else because they'd solved that crucial issue.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
So yeah, it's good. We like it. And that's where I sit. So as far as my day-to-day stuff, I'm in part of that discovery, that strategic consulting process. And then from the time that we build, like, I've got a very talented team who are experts in all the things and who are better at repetitive tasks than I am. I'm not. Me and repetitive tasks don't really go so well together. And so, they're the ones that kind of, extract the stuff for the social media content, do the research to create the blog content, do all that sort of stuff ongoing, consistently.
Yeah. That deep dive initially, it's so powerful. I'm sure you throw up some other opportunities for other specialists, like when And then the work you deliver though is tied to a guideline that any viable business is going to spend X percent of their turnover on. And it's
we
not
don't
like you're
prescribe, because you say viable percentage, but it's all very relative. So it's like, for some people, their time, they've got more time than they have cash. So we do the best they can. Something is better than nothing. So we have a minimum engagement where it's just not worth. They're not going to get any ROI. If they need to spend less than the ideal amount is, then we're okay with that, because they may well have got themselves into a hole and they're just trying to get themselves out, like, slowly, and that's okay. But that's why we have those conversations in the first instance about what's needed and what things are.
But I like that methodology. Whatever viable equals, it doesn't really, as you say, it doesn't really matter. But the point is, you're working on a mission critical part of your business, and if you 100%. Don't have it in house and you want to remain viable as a business, you have to spend some money on accounting and compliance every year. You have to spend money on insurance. There are things you must, and unfortunately, I've seen it plenty of times where it's viewed as a discretionary spend.
Yeah, and it's just not.
It's not.
If you want to stay, so that's what I'm saying, like, rule of thumb, if you want to stay level and keep market share, rule of thumb is 10% for any industry.
Yeah. So it's not, it might be, dire times in a business, and what can you cut? You can't turn, you've got to pay the rent, you've got to keep the lights on. But that's why I like this idea that you're spending your money according to a well thought out strategic plan. So it's not might take a while to kick in, and I'm sure you go through all of that.
Yeah.
Not instant, but at least it's tied into this is a professional way to run a business like this. And before you get out of bed every day, there's expenses you're going to have or investments you're going to make.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, as well, is that we do work well with, so we've got one client, for instance, we've been working with for, I know, probably maybe 3 or 4 years, I think, like a while. And when they first came to us, it was one of the directors who was the MD, managing director of the business. During the time that they've worked with them, they were promoted to CEO, and then they brought in a marketing manager at one point in time, and we've continued to work. So the work that we've done has changed somewhat, because obviously then they had a dedicated marketing manager. Now he has an assistant. So things are changing, which means that they can do sort of stuff more in-house, but we still are doing our things. It just means that our time is freed up to do different things than we needed to do before. You know what I mean? And so you might, and this is where kind of, again, that strategic thing is like one of the conversations we have is what assets you have. And by assets, I include people. It's like if you've got someone who's like really good and really creative, but they just need some guidance, then we'll help give them the guidance. And you might do your social media posting in-house if you've got someone who's got the time and the capacity and the skill set to do it, if they get given the right tools. And then we are freed up to spend the budget doing other stuff that's more complex. If your social media posting isn't going to be consistent, then we don't recommend that you try and do it yourself. Like just get us the stuff ad hoc, inconsistently, and we will make it consistent in our end. You know what I mean? You can
set
flood
up
us
a
and
process.
then give us nothing. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, a bit of automation.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write a book? Because you've had plenty. I could have a guess, but what was your rationale?
So it was a multiple. Like there's a lot in my head. Obviously, as you can probably tell by talking to me, there's like a lot of knowledge and experience and books I've read and things and stuff. And I wanted to get it out there. And I also wanted it to be, because obviously, you know, even though we are affordable, we're not really affordable. If you're a solopreneur or something, like it probably doesn't make math sense to use us. So I wanted to kind of do that mentoring thing more at scale than I had time or capacity to do with my own face and my own time and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So it was just kind of like a bit of a and I wanted it to be really practical. I found that a lot of you know, people and friends and people in my circle, like they might read books, but they don't action it. So the book is kind of like there are spaces in there to reflect on stuff. There's a bit of a workbook of like, so it's quite practical. And it's a lot of businesses I find they don't have time, like they're busy. They don't have time to read a 500-page book and like dive into all the juiciness of it. So it's like quite short and just kind of high level, big picture, but it gives you the opportunity, if something interests you, to go deeper down particular rabbit holes to do other things. So yeah, so that's why it's the same purpose, empowering businesses, empowering people. Yeah.
And it's called Fixing Frankenstein. What's the key messages in it?
So it's basically, you know, an overview of the key problems that I've seen with businesses of how the Frankensteins have been made. A lot of it is about like not having a purpose, not having core values, not knowing your numbers. So it's kind of like I own a marketing company, but me as a human, as a business owner, and I've got lots of business acumen and business experience. So it was like also a place of where can I put that kind of doesn't really belong in Oracle Tree, but it's stuff that I always have conversations about when I'm talking to people. Because, you know, like marketing goes in so many different places that it has the operations and the hiring and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of touches all the main pillars that you need for business just at high level. Yeah.
Yeah, but beyond not just marketing, but beyond your kind of immediate domain, which is helping owners. But it's very clear that you can't help yourself, you know, but dive in and kind of why and how, and it's it's excellent. I look forward to having a read.
Yeah, and it's about taking charge. Like, you know, again, like I feel like a lot of businesses, like understanding, and I think we might have spoken about this before when we were chatting as well, not just now, but before, about the difference between being self-employed and having a business. And neither one is right or wrong, but a lot of business owners don't realize which one they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think if you know yourself, like actually know yourself and make conscious decisions on what you want to happen, then your business and your life is better, rather than kind of floating along without like choosing a thing.
Yeah.
Because if you're not choosing, then someone else is choosing and you might end up not where you want to go.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I see why owners end up there. There's 2.6 million micro or small business owners in the country. 1.6 is zero employee, but the other 1 million or so, there's an awful lot of those businesses are still highly dependent on the owner. So therefore they're highly dependent on the level of energy, expertise, capacity to manage staff or not. I mean, it's they're still owner-centric businesses, and there's just an underwhelming level of understanding and empathy for that. I think there's a lot of great advisors that really do try, and some do, you know, support owners, but also owners kind kind of loath to, they don't trust easily, and they don't reach out often enough, and that, kind of could go from something that is probably fixable to just a level of stress that, it's awful to see.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so
Absolutely. And I think that, like you were mentioning, that a lot of things are owner centric, and I find too that sometimes things that are obvious, like most owners don't do their own tax returns. It's understood for most people that they have a tax accountant to at least do their own tax returns. Too many owners I know do their own bookkeeping. Most don't do their own tax. And I think that there was a period of time, which still exists now, where all the people who were teaching people in my field what to do, and it was like all about be the expert, do one thing, be the expert, which is great and it's valid and there's nothing wrong with that. However, the unintended consequence of that is that business owners will hire an expert who's an expert in one thing and has very limited, if any, understanding how their one thing fits into other things. And they look to the business owner to direct them on what tasks to do, but they're the expert. So the business owner is like, I've hired a Facebook expert, for argument's sake. And this is like a true example. I had a client once, like a few years back now, who was spending about $3,000 a month on, no, $2,500 a month on Facebook ads, just the ads, not the management of it, but the actual ad spend, giving to Facebook $2,500 a month. He had a Facebook guy and he had a web guy. And he wasn't getting any calls. And we looked at it, and within 2 seconds, I could see what the problem is. The Facebook guy said, everything's working. Look, we've got great click-through rate. It's all fantastic. The numbers all look great. The ads are working great. It's not my problem. Point finger. The web guy was like, everything's working fine. Look, I can go in. They can book it. The automation's all working. No problem. It's not my fault. It's the ads guy. Looking at the two together, the ads guy was effectively selling warm and fuzzy. So I won't go into details because I want to give away the client thing, but it was something that was warm and fuzzy of like, look at these, happy things, like come and look at kittens, effectively. You went on the landing page and it was quite an old school like sales thing with black writing and big red, like orange book now. And it was like, literally when I looked at it the first time, I literally recoiled. It was like, oh, this looks cool. And then I was like, whoa, like it like hit you in the face. Nothing was wrong with it. What was promised on the ad was on the page. It was just further down. But there was no like connection between the two, even though both things are working, you know what I mean? So we saved this guy $2,500 a month by just turning off the ad, like instantly. It's like, we'll turn that off first, save yourself $2,500, then we can fix the problem. Yeah. So it's that kind of stuff. And if they, like the business owner doesn't know because they're not looking at that big picture, and they shouldn't have to, like they're not a marketing expert. They're not a communications expert, but they have to direct and say, can you please do this? And
And they've hired someone who is, and they're really hopeful and expectant that it'll turn things around. And
both parts were fine. Like neither of these experts were doing the wrong thing. It's just neither one looked at the other person's part of the pie. They were keeping in their own lane, and they didn't look to see how it worked. Yeah. And that sort of stuff happens all the time. And
departmental thinking.
Yeah. And I find it heartbreaking because it's just because no one was wrong. Like there was no villain in that story. There was no one who was doing the wrong thing. Any one of them could have like looked at a bigger level, but it was no one's job to look at a bigger level apart from the business owner who didn't know.
Yeah.
They knew what they knew.
Yeah. But then you got involved, you have that conversation, you apply a bit of a top-down thinking, and
it's a curiosity. It's like, what's going on here? And I think that's kind of part of the essence of us, that we're curious.
Yeah. It's a topic that comes up a lot on this podcast. It's where do I go? Firstly, asking yourself, why am I in business? What do I want out of it? And then you can start to say, well, maybe I need a bit of this and a bit of that. But it's still a big leap, and it's still unfamiliar territory. So through this conversation, we've talked a lot about mentoring, and so what are some of the things that you've tapped into over the years? You've been actively mentoring in the wellness center, your partners, tenants, and in the business. Talk about it through the lens of the staff you have, and also your clients. So, but do you agree it's a real missed opportunity not to have some external,
for sure,
voices, eyes and ears on issues, not about technical expertise on Facebook ads, but about
business,
what am I doing with my business?
Conversations, 100%. So I also mentor for Well, the business I'm mentoring for at the moment is they've closed themselves down. It's owned by a big multinational who's closing them down as of next week. But right currently, I'm actually mentor a group of my competitors through a digital agency owner accelerator. If anyone knows, they will know. But it's their parent company is DigitalOcean, who is shutting them down. But I've been doing that since 2014, which is great. Like, you see all these agency owners having problems, and I don't think that there's anything that beats someone who's gone through what you've gone through and seen it happen from so many different angles. And I just don't, nothing beats experience. It just can't. Either your own experience or your observed experience between seeing from different things. So even right down to business models, like what business model works. There's so many different ways that you can make a business work. Like having someone who's seen a lot of them in action, sees the pros and cons of it, and can help you talk through what you want to do, like, is hugely powerful. And I think it doesn't need to be necessarily a formal arrangement. You find friends. Most people who've been in business for a while are happy to share their knowledge and expertise in some way, shape, or form. Like, any kind of, a good place to find people like that is any kind of business accelerator groups or a mentor thing, or just like someone, like, genuinely reach out to someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, I really like it. Can we talk? I'll buy you a coffee.
Yeah, yeah,
think,
stuff.
Yeah, I know.
But you've taken have you had mentors, coaches over the
100%.
years? Yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you eat your own dog food or whatever 100%. That expression is. Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't have people around you more experienced than you, either in general or seeing a different thing, it's not necessarily more. There will always be more experience in some levels. A good friend and arguably mentor of mine said that, talks always about, above, below, and equal. So I feel like if you always have people who are above you in some areas, equal to you in some areas, and below you, which is a horrible word, in some areas, then you can, like, brainstorm equal to equal. You can learn from other people. So I'm part of, like, a very robust community, a business accelerator community that, we meet once a quarter and hang out, and, you have those big conversations with people who are much more experienced in business than I am even.
Yeah.
200 people team and stuff, but you're getting that insight.
You're stepping out of your business for a start, and you're talking with other people who are in business, and but you seem to keep on. It's like a circular thing that you'd probably feel like you're a better mentor by being mentored, and
100%,
and so on it goes. Yeah.
I think as soon as you feel like you know everything, then you've lost whatever there is to lose. I think that there's always more to learn, or different insights, or different perceptions to see of the same, like a different way of looking at things. And sometimes people with, like, the least experience can give the most insight. It's like, well, why are you doing it like that? Like, how about this? Because it's just completely fresh eyes. They haven't been taught the bad habits, or don't have the bad habits. So I think it's kind of, all different ways.
Yeah. Curiosity is just so beautiful, isn't it? Like when somebody's curious about your business, or you want to find out more about theirs, it's people love to chat.
Yeah,
100%. and they maybe they're unsure about what to do next, but yeah, that's, when you start diving in, it's fascinating why and how people got to where they are, and if in the right circumstances, if they want to do something new and different, how you can get them there with some support.
And sometimes there's a little. So I remember I was on a mastermind table. I don't know whether you're familiar with the concept of a mastermind, but, like, literally, like, the sum of the masterminds being greater than the sum of the parts. So the whole mastermind being greater than some of the parts. And someone shared with me a model that they had, like, just the way their org chart was done, or their accountability chart was done, of who was in what seat, and it changed the way our structure worked, and it's so much better. We found that our project management seat was draining to people because it was kind of two different things. So we just put an admin assistant in underneath, like, changed everything. And it was, like, such a simple thing. It was like, well, we can do that tomorrow. Like, it doesn't need to be a big thing, but it's just made everything different just by being open to doing things a different way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's cool.
Going to finish off with a couple of broader questions. People, businesses, books, blogs that you like, you endorse.
So I've got a book. So this is, if I was going to do one book, this is it. Traction by Gino Wickman.
Right.
Fantastic book.
Traction by Gino Wickman.
Yeah.
Okay. What's in it? What is it?
So it's, like, basically an operating system for running a business. It's designed for like sort of small company size, but you can retrofit it down to like smaller businesses. But it talks about, like quarterly meeting rhythms and setting goals and rocks, and people, having your people in the right position, and how to hire them, and core values, and
Excellent.
all sorts of stuff. Like, it's really like it's an operating system for running a business.
Okay.
So it's got like 6 sections on it. It's fantastic. Really, really good. One of the concepts in it that I haven't seen anywhere else is the idea that most successful businesses have got a visionary and an integrator, and that oftentimes visionaries don't have an integrator, and that's why they're struggling, which a lot of our clients, like, they're the visionary, they're the high quick start who have all the ideas, but if you don't have an integrator, you'll burn your team out, which is what I was alluding to earlier on.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, like, it's like, yes, I am a visionary. I don't want to be creating processes. I'm not the right person to do that. And they know it in their like being, and kind of saying, yeah, that's normal. Like, you think about, oftentimes the integrator is not as well known, but is there. Like, Disney is a great example. Like, there was Disney and his brother, like, he did all the stuff. So,
a business, like, I call that a business partnership. It's not a formal partnership, but if you have a combination of those kinds of skills, there are businesses I've come across that have it, and they do not know how lucky they are to have
100%.
kind of happened upon each other, or that maybe there's 3 of them.
Yep.
Sometimes it's family, but often it's just
people. And
friends.
Oftentimes in practice, it's like the CEO and the ops manager is often kind of where those people go to naturally.
Yeah.
But like having them, okay, well, this is your CEO role and this is your ops manager role, but this is your visionary role and this is your integrator role, and it's its own seat on the accountability chart. The other thing is to have an accountability chart, not an org chart. Like, organization isn't anything. Like, what is the dot points that this seat is accountable for, which is really cool when you're growing and scaling. It's like, okay, well, that seat's too big. That person's accountable for too many things. We need to cut
that
in
role
half.
is,
the role is too big. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's really cool. Like,
okay.
Best business book I've ever read by far.
All right. Anything else that you can happily talk about your book as well?
There are so many. Oh yeah, my book, Fixing Frankenstein. Everyone should read it. Certainly, if you're kind of in that thing, it does kind of touch. Like, I've borrowed from Attraction in a lot of it. So if this like feels too big for you, it's like distilled down, and the key parts are in my book, along with a lot of other stuff. As every business owner, I think most business owners, they kind of learn from all the different things and then kind of distill it in.
Yep.
So yeah, Fixing Frankenstein, how to take the monster out of running your small business, available on Amazon or fixingfrankenstein.com. Feel free. But yeah,
right.
just connect with people that would be my thing.
Yeah. No. Well, we'll do that.
Yeah.
And if you were the head of the Australia's Federal Small Business Department, what would your top 3 priorities be for fixing and making our small business economy more resilient?
So I would work out some kind of formalized, funded, tailored mentorship program, because I do think that mentorship is that important, that I think if it should be available for any business owner who needs it, with people who can, some kind of repository or something where people can do it and have it be funded properly, so you get people proper mentoring on a proper rhythm, not too ad hoc. That'd be number 1. Number 2 would be teaching financial literacy for free. I think that a lot of business owners, they abdicate their responsibility of their finances to their bookkeeper or their accountant, and they don't look at their finances, and like, except for the year when they have a tax to pay, and they're surprised that they have to pay it. And there's a lot of stuff in there that that things that bookkeepers know, like, for instance, the Div 7 loan, which a lot of business owners don't know about the Div 7 loan. If you're listening to this and you don't know what a Div 7 loan is, go and find out. It's really important. You shouldn't have one unless you know what you're doing. And oftentimes you do, particularly if you're just taking drawings out of your business. You probably have a Div 7 loan. Like, that can come and bite you in the bum, and they're not good.
Sometimes, at some point it will, yeah.
Yeah, unless you're strategic and you pay it back every year, in which case that's not a bad thing, but you need to know about it. And a lot of people have them and don't know about it, and then they wonder what's happening. So some financial literacy, so people can actually not be scared of their numbers, like be able to read their profit and loss and see what things are. And
actually embrace it and say, okay, how do I want to change? Where do I start? And it's reflected. Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. Just literacy, like, not necessarily, like, you don't need to, and you shouldn't try and be an accountant or a bookkeeper. You don't need to understand everything, but you should be able to read it, like, read the book and understand what it means.
With all of with Zero, MyOb, Reckon, Intuit, there's so much reporting available that you can, it's actually way more powerful than the tax returns that your accountant does for compliance for good reason. And it's a case of in a scenario of a business sale, what's happening in your business this week, this month, this quarter compared to same week last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably a bit granular, but last quarter, same quarter last year, same half year. It has such a powerful influence,
it has massive influence,
and it's right there at your fingertips. You
100%.
work out how to do it. So,
and if you know, because like, you know, a lot of business have seasonality, for instance, and it's about empowering you, right? So if you know that every June is really busy and every November is really quiet, you're not going to spend all the money that you get in June because you know that you're going to have to put some aside for November. Otherwise, if you just like, oh, look, all the money, I've got so much money, and you spend it all, and you wonder you have no money in November. And it's like, it's just, basic literacy, I think, is essential. That should be free because otherwise people won't do it, and not too complicated. Like I see like training and it's too hard. So anyway, that's number 2. And the other one is some kind of like some way of having equal footing for small business. So this is kind of like an A and B. So I was thinking, and I don't know how it would work, but you know how like you can have like buyers conglomerates and stuff like that to get like better rates on things. So I was seeing if there was buying groups kind of thing, but some kind of facilitated buying group scenario, because you just think about all the cafes, all the builders, all the everyone. A lot of people who are buying materials for their supplies, and they're buying it as a small business or a micro business and paying retail prices for it effectively, or retail minus 10% maybe if they've got like a Bunnings card. So sometimes a group buying functionality that's facilitated, and also related but flip side is some kind of proper lobbying kind of thing to government, because big business have got a lot of money that have a lot of influence on government policies and stuff. Small businesses, because we're so distributed, even though we have more power, like we have 80% of the economy, we don't really have a voice because there are so many little voices and we're not heard. Whereas big business, they're smaller numbers. Yeah. So they get heard. So level playing field.
Yeah. Look, I think that, excellent. Getting the definition of a small business right versus a micro. They throw, SMEs thrown around. So a lot more. There's some active lobbying or representation by a couple of organisations, but I think those buying groups, they do that in cooperatives, they do that in franchise groups, and for independent owners, it's something to be.
You don't have a level playing field. Yeah, it needs to be facilitated. Someone needs to organise it, which is what I was thinking. It could be a government thing, like an opt-in sort of thing.
Yeah. Or an entrepreneurial small business owner just says...
Just say let's do the buying group, yeah. I mean, there's lots of logistics in that, obviously, because it has to get to multiple different locations and blah, 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 blah. But if I rule the world, something along those lines.
You would, absolutely. No, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Marama. Yeah. Look, I love that question. I love your thoughtful answers. So it's going to be a long best of list at the end of the year, but it'll give us something to talk about. So very much appreciate your time today. Thank you for being so open and sharing. Bring a lot of on-ground experience, not just in the domain that you work in at Oracle Tree, but just much more broadly across different types of businesses and corporate, and also your approach, which is about mentoring and being mentored and coached, and I guess getting other eyes and ears on the challenges that we all face. So thanks so much for your time.
Absolute pleasure. I enjoyed it. Good conversation.
Oh, that's great. If someone wanted to reach out, what's the easiest way?
I'm everywhere that you are. Like we always talk about having a big digital footprint. So whatever device you're on, I'm there either at Marama Carmichael. I'm pretty easy to find. There's only one other, and she's Japanese and is related to me apparently. So you'll find me on socials, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of that kind of stuff, or Oracle Tree. So we've got the same domain everywhere. Or email me, marama@oracletree.com. So
excellent.
Easy.
All right. Well, look, thanks again. You take care, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Beautiful. Same team. Thanks. Bye.